Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started tonight. Welcome to all that are here in council chambers, those watching on TV. Welcome to the August 3rd edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. Unfortunately, for those that are here and for those that are watching at home, you can see it's mask time again. We are wearing masks to try and keep with the best practice guidance from the CDC, IDPH, and DuPage County Health Department. So in village buildings, please do wear a mask. As is our custom, we'll begin this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Jose,
Here.
Commissioner Wallace,
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Here.
Commissioner Colavani,
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Here.
Commissioner Glover.
Here.
Nice to see everybody tonight. Glad we're all here. Is there a motion concerning minutes of a previous council meeting?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the July 13th, 2021 minutes as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Just like that, we are on to item 4 on our agenda tonight. This is a proclamation concerning the National League of Women Voters. Whereas the League of Women Voters was officially founded in Chicago in 1920, just 6 months before the 19th Amendment was ratified and women won the vote, and whereas the League was formed by the suffragists of the National American Women's Suffrage Association and began as a political experiment designed to help 20 million women carry out their new responsibility as voters. Whereas the League has remained nonpartisan, neither supporting or opposing any political party or individual candidate. Whereas the League empowers voters, defends democracy, and champions government systems that are open, transparent, and inclusive. Whereas the League continues today as a nonpartisan grassroots organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase awareness and understanding of public policy issues, and influences public policy through advocacy. Whereas the League of Women Voters of Downers Grove was established on August 9, 1921, and has served our community and surrounding area for 100 years. Whereas the organization was expanded to include Woodridge in 1976 and Lisle in 1988. Whereas the League is a civic organization that has worked since 1921 to improve government and engage residents in the decisions that impact their lives. Whereas the League of Women Voters of Downers Grove, Woodridge, Lisle is commemorating their 100th anniversary. Now therefore, I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim the year of August 9th, 2021 through August 8th, 2022 as the League of Women Voters of Downers Grove, Woodridge, Lisle 100th anniversary year, and urge all citizens of Downers Grove to reflect on the outstanding accomplishments of the League and to congratulate and thank the League for their unrivaled service to our community. Dated this 3rd day of August, 2021, Downers Grove, Illinois. There are a few members of the League here to accept this proclamation. Come on down to the front.
That I'm beaming with pride. 100 years we've been doing this. And one of our very first members in 1921 was Lottie Holman O'Neill, who was the first woman to be elected to the Illinois State Assembly. And another proud member of the League and a past president of the League was Betty Cheever. And some of you know her well. And this was the picture taken of her for our 50th anniversary back in 1971. So I'm very proud of the accomplishments of our members and of the things that we do from year to year to year. Our goal is voters' rights, voter registration, and voter education. And the voter education can be a challenge. We have held candidate meet and greets, and we've held forums, some in this very room. And what we did last year, we didn't fold because of the pandemic. We found creative ways to still educate voters about who was running for office. In the congressional races, we collaborated with other leagues in DuPage County and Cook County to have forums on Zoom. And another thing we did, which was kind of innovative, and I have to say we copied it from Wheaton. I can't claim that we thought of this ourselves. But what we did, and some of you may remember doing this for us, we sent invitations to candidates for local offices to give us 5-minute videos. And we had a lovely committee. At least two of our committee members are out here. And they contacted the candidates, got the contact information, which is kind of hard to get sometimes. And they came up with the appropriate questions to ask for the particular races. And so those candidates made their own videos, and we screened them, and we posted them on our website, on our YouTube channel, and on the Illinois State Voters Guide. And I have to tell you that even skipping the uncontested races, we processed 49 candidate videos for the April election. We did them for County Board and County Forest Preserve back in the fall, and we assisted Wheaton in coming up with the judicial candidates. And so this may be a thing in the future. I would love to go back to in-person, but this may come to be something we do as well. Anyway, and we've also been doing legislative interviews with our congressional leaders and our state leaders. And we've been doing it on Zoom. So we haven't folded because there's a pandemic, and we're not going to either. We won't give up. And I'll have to tell you that some of us, it was pretty challenging because we don't have a lot of tech knowledge. We had to watch our younger colleagues roll their eyes at us and ask. Some of our husbands did a lot to help us too. So that's how we got it all done, and we continue, and we plan to continue for at least another 100 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, item 5 on our agenda tonight. These are public comments section for items not on tonight's agenda. This is an opportunity for the public to let us know what's on their mind, give some comments to the village council for items not on tonight's agenda. A few rules just for everybody to please remember at any public comment section of our meetings. Please state your name for the record. We do like to know who we're talking to. Keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. There's no need to repeat what others have said. Saying it 5 times or 50 times, we are listening and we're taking it all in. Please remember, it's an opportunity to be heard. It is not a debate. So there will be times when questions are asked that we may have to get back to you on. There may be times when this group is hearing information or comments for the first time. It is not a debate. It's an opportunity for us to hear from you. So with that, if anybody has items they want to talk about that are not on tonight's agenda, please come on down to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Jim Wool. On Monday, July 19th, parents attended a District 99 school board meeting to address the board members on issues that were of concern to them. In other words, the parents wanted to exercise their First Amendment right of free speech. You would think that parents wanting to simply exercise their First Amendment right, a right that is cherished by Americans, indeed it holds a sacred place for our nation, would not be controversial. You would think that all would respect the right and would not want to deny their fellow neighbors this right. Well, you'd be wrong. Councilwoman Leslie Sadowski Fugit, who holds an elected position in our town, intentionally and actively attempted to deny her neighbors their right to address the school board. The following is a Facebook conversation that Councilwoman Fugit had with members of her group as they plotted to stop parents from addressing the board. The first member said, "I mean, we could, seriously, could line up enough people where their folks couldn't even get in. How many of the good guys would we need to make that happen? Anyone up for the task?" Leslie Sadowski Fugit enthusiastically responded with the following, "I'm in. I plan on wearing my Black Cat Lovers Against White Supremacy shirt. I have my speech written out. I can get there at 5:30. Then another member of Councilwoman Fugit's group responded, "Leslie, is 5:30 early enough? If we all brought our kids, that would also fill seats, right? When do you think the others would be arriving?" Councilwoman Fugit responded, "No idea what time they arrive, sadly. But I doubt that early. I am up for the task. I will get there at 5:30. I don't know what the capacity seating is, but I can find out. Shutting them out and not giving them a platform is what we need to do." So Councilwoman Fugit, you believe that it is appropriate to shut your neighbors out, to stop your neighbors from speaking at their local school board meeting? Councilwoman Fugit believes that people who disagree with her are not deserving of their First Amendment right to free speech. Leslie, those people who unfortunately you look down upon are your neighbors who simply wanted to address the members of their school board. No, Leslie, we are not white supremacists because we disagree with you. We simply disagree with you. This is utterly shameful behavior from Councilwoman Fugit, and I'm requesting that the Downers Grove Village Council censure Councilwoman Fugit. Thank you.
Before anybody goes any further, I want to just make a comment. I made the comment before, it's not a debate, and it's not, so please keep that in mind. But I'd also like to encourage everybody, remember that we're neighbors, and we are going to disagree. And I'm not saying anybody in any conversation is particularly right or wrong. What I'm trying to do is remind everybody that the purpose of this body is to deliberate policy on behalf of the residents of the Village of Downers Grove. And in order to do so, we have to do it in a way where we are all respecting each other and we are all acknowledging that we have, in fact, those different opinions. So we are here, we put ourselves out here, every one of these elected officials and everyone before us, and subject ourselves to public criticism, rightly so. But please try and remember that any kind of time you have a situation where you disagree with a council member, particularly if it's a personal, direct disagreement, treat them like you would your next door neighbor or your spouse or your kid. Start with them. Don't start with the television camera. We will disagree again, I assure you. Everyone out there will disagree with somebody up here at some point, and we will say something that you find offensive or don't like. Start with the idea of trying to be neighborly, please. Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Probably got to speak up a little.
Okay,
Do your
all right.
best.
All right. My name is Paul Scott, and I'm here tonight representing a group called Unity Partnership and the NAACP. And my reason for being here is to continue an effort started last summer in the wake of the killing of George Floyd, which ended up in showing a lot of outrage across the country with respect to that incident. I began making these remarks at City Council and at the DuPage County Board last year and was sidetracked by COVID and made them over Zoom, but I thought I'd come out and share with you guys tonight. A lot has happened since that terrible disaster last year, and what I'm hoping to do is to help turn that outrage from last year into action, as we've done with some other villages around the area, primarily in DuPage, but it expands further. And I want to speak specifically to the idea of how it is that as an organization whose focus, Unity Partners' focus is on helping law enforcement build trust and relationships with communities, we find a very, very important role in that effort for the villages and towns that make up our county. And so, our police are given an almost impossible task. Oftentimes, we turn to them when we failed to execute our own duties as citizens and say to those guys, go fix it. I say jokingly to law enforcement that, if a spaceship landed, you guys are going to get a call. You don't have any special skills for dealing with spaceships, but we know we'll give it to you and you can't say no, and you'll try and fix it. And what happens oftentimes is that what we see as disdain for the police is more disdain for the profession and not individual officers. It's a long historic thing that really amounts to a recognition that the police represent something that is historically not very positive in a lot of communities. And so our role at Unity Partnership and with the NAACP and some other community organizations around the area is to try and deal with the kinds of issues that result in this disdain that we see for law enforcement, because we believe in the mission, we believe our law enforcement officers are given an incredibly difficult job, and we want them to succeed. And so what I've done over the last couple of years, I've been at this for about 6 years, but what I've done over the last couple of years is come to the realization that my efforts were misguided, that I've been going to the law enforcement departments and saying, hey guys, what can you do about increasing your diversity in hiring? And they'll try and they'll say, here's what we're doing, and all of a sudden it doesn't work. A lot of villages in DuPage County, as you might know, are without much diversity in terms of the police workforce. When I say diversity, I don't mean women and men. I mean colors. Okay, that's what I mean by diversity. And oftentimes, chiefs will say, oh yeah, we're real diverse. We have 5 women. That's not diversity. Okay. Diversity has to do with color also, okay? So what we say is that if the police are going to be successful in their effort to improve on diversity and to help address the underlying problems that impact on us and that have plagued us over millennia in regard to historically marginalized people having this lack of relationship with law enforcement, I believe it has to begin with our villages and towns taking a step, an active step, and a deliberate step in doing something about their own diversity. I believe that it's much more likely, all things being equal, if a police department is trying to recruit people of color, if their town has people of color working in the administrative offices and the streets and sands and all those other places, I think they'll have a much better time, all things being equal. And this is a message I'm sharing with all of our partners. And I can tell you that I'm seeing some success in some areas. I won't name the village, but there's a village in our area that was incorporated in the late 1880s. They've never had a black police officer to this day. And I'm still working with them real hard to try and fix that. But what they have done is, after some of my effort, is they've gone back and they've found a founder of their city who happened to be African American, and they've put together a diversity and equity plan, and they are going to take this gentleman's image and expand it through their city to let people know, hey, we have had people of color in our town for a long time. And when you look into that, you'll find out they're going to put this gentleman's face on their village sticker in 2022 as a result of me researching and finding out who this guy was and sharing with them. Now, the other thing that we're doing is we're telling our police partners that they must be more deliberate, and the villages must be more deliberate in letting us know when they want help in terms of filling their positions. Most recently, a village gave me 7 weeks' notice of its applications for police department hirees, and that is unusual. Normally I get a week or two. So I would just say to you guys, please recognize that there is a role for villages to play, lead by example, and help us do something about the underlying problems that impact us so greatly in the area of race relations. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Hillary Dank, 433 Wilson Street in Downers Grove. Mary Hobai did a lovely job speaking to you, but she did not invite you all to our party on Sunday. So everybody in the village is invited. We have the RSVP on our website and our Facebook page. All of the members of the village council and the mayor have been invited, and many are able to attend, which is wonderful. So we hope you can come. It's at 4 p.m. at Hummer Park on Sunday afternoon, August 8th. And thank you again for the lovely proclamation.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Scarlatti. I'm actually here for another reason, but when I was reading all of your minutes, something came to my mind, and I figured there's a forum I'm going to ask you. Several years ago, I had some work done on the front of my house, and it necessitated calling Julie out to the property, and they marked all of the easements on the property. The most significant one is an AT&T vault that runs on the sidewalk with just a small encroachment onto the property. And it's been there forever, from what I understand. Well, again, several years ago, AT&T was boring on our street. I don't know why they didn't go into the line, into the vault that's already underneath, but they had the big machine out there, and they were drilling from one corner to the next corner on our block. And I didn't think anything of it. Well, lo and behold, I had to have some additional work. I wanted to do some additional work on the front of my house, and I had Julie come out again. And this time, the AT&T line, or one of the public lines that had not been there before, is now 10 feet into my property. It goes underneath my tree. It goes about 10 feet through my driveway, into my neighbor's driveway, and into the middle of his front yard, and then angles over back towards the corner. I called, who do I call about? I tried calling the village and saying, who do I contact about this taking without compensation, because they have taken my property? I didn't give them an easement there. You're not allowed to just take an easement from somebody without notifying them or compensating them for that easement. So how do I address that? If I want to go put in a new tree and I cut and I dig into that yard and I sever whoever's line they put, we don't have big setbacks. So it's only about 15 feet from my house. Who do I contact about, hey, you're not supposed to be here in the first place, and you went underneath one of my big trees when you did that, and who do I call if that tree starts dying? Because you bored underneath there without telling anybody you were doing it, right? They were supposed to be staying on the sidewalk, right? That's where your easement, that's where their easement for the lines were. Why are they 10 feet into my property now? And what do I do about that?
Well, I'd start by talking to our community development department and asking them for a little bit of help to further this conversation. I don't actually know the answer to your question, Steve, who exactly to contact, but I know that they would be able to point you in the right direction.
Well, okay, so then what? I mean, they're going to say, well, sorry.
Well, I actually don't know the answer. That's why I'm saying
Okay.
you're going to have to start with them.
Who is it? Who do I ask?
Community development.
Community development?
Community development. Go to our website. They'll be very easy to find, community development department. Have a conversation with them and see where that goes. That would
Okay.
be the next step to take.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with subjects not on tonight's agenda? Come on down to the podium, please.
Impeccable timing. Pardon me, I just came from the shop. My name is Greg Nosich, and I own and operate Pull Tool. I'm on Bel Air Lane in Downers Grove, just north of Ogden, which is the lot right next to the old Enterprise is not there anymore. If anybody in the village remembers the Peppies, this was a Peppies at one time. Anyway, I'm the ivy-covered building, but that's not to say that's why I'm here. The project is going swimmingly throughout that area. If anybody has lived in that north of Ogden water abatement area, it's going great. I have, on first name basis, the engineers at Dolan and also an engineer at the village. So with that said, they are very looking for the word, they're very accommodating. So I'm not out to needle anybody. So the plan came in, and there was in part of the sewer system, there was going to be a catch basin right in my apron of my shop. It's a machine shop. I get semi-tractor trailers, 55-footers sometimes, that's the big one. And they have to negotiate a very small area down Bel Air and then back into my shop. And then I load them, 2,000-3,000 pounds sometimes. And then they leave out to Ogden. And why I'm telling you all of this is because in doing the storm drainage, the engineers accommodated my request by not putting a hole right in the middle of my apron and then thus move it to further to the north so that that wouldn't be an issue. And they did that. However, I was noticing today when all the dust cleared that I'm losing my apron. And if you're talking, a box truck or something, that you see around town, it's not a big issue. They can negotiate, pickup trucks is not a big issue. 55, then it becomes they need that room. If you would look back into the history, as there was this abatement made for me. I don't know if that's the right word to choose, but when I moved in 2013, 2014, I was afforded a very large turn radius, not for me, for the trucks to come in, come back, and all that. It's the plan changed. All right, so they helped me, but then they moved this drain right off the corner, and it's like 2.5 feet deep. So I suggested that, semi could fall into that hole. I don't know, maybe not. It doesn't look right. The turn radius, I lost my turn radius. So that's why I'm here, is to, I guess, get back my turn radius, or point me in the right direction to get the answers corrected. Because I've talked to Dolan, who I understand might be wrong on the name, are the engineers on the project, and they're working for the village in that respect. And then there's A Lamp, which is the big contractor.
Hey, Greg.
And then
Greg,
there's
can I stop you? We stop you.
And then there's my liaison, my village contact, all which are very nice and very accommodating. I just want to make sure that I don't want to peg anything. I just feel that I kind of got lost in the shuffle with the fact that, the project was delayed a year, and this was all supposed to have been last year. And
Hey, Greg,
and the
I
shuffling
got
around.
to interrupt you a minute, okay?
Okay, go ahead.
I think we understand the project that's ongoing got adjusted, moved a little bit, catch basin moved. you've lost some of the space you need, you feel you need to operate, particularly when you have large trucks showing up there. This group gets that, and I think we're hearing that. It's going to be very much like what we were just telling Steve. You're going to have to be in touch with our community development department, and they're going to talk through it with you. If if at some point down the line you feel like you're not getting the help you deserve, or you're not getting responded to, that's one thing. But this group up, hang on.
Okay, go ahead.
This group up here is in no position to even opine on whether what's there is appropriate, inappropriate, whether there should be different accommodation made, none whatsoever. We're sitting up here, I suspect my colleagues are like me, thinking, yeah, I remember we talked about that project last year. I mean, it really, so.
I want to be official and say that I would really like the village planner to give me a call as soon as possible, because they're already doing concrete and everything.
You have a card?
And it's getting like really complicated now, because there's gas company involved.
Okay, all right. Hey, Greg, do you have a card?
I will give you my name and number.
Give that guy right there in the end with the glasses on top of his head.
Thank you very much.
Hand him the card, and he will get somebody in touch with you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else, subjects not on tonight's agenda? All right, we will continue with the agenda then. Item 6 is our consent agenda. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Item 7, our active agenda tonight. Is there a motion concerning an ordinance to approve a PUD?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt an ordinance approving amendments to the Oak Trace Senior Living Community Planned Unit Development Number 32, located at 200 Village Drive, as presented.
Second.
Before we have any questions or comments, I forgot to just let everybody know the active portion of our agenda, where we are right this moment, is the part of the meeting where we plan to take action on items typically that have been discussed at least once before, sometimes multiple times prior to that. That is the case with this item. We've talked about this the last time we met in July, and we plan likely to take some action on this tonight. Is there anybody from the audience that wants to comment on the PUD amendment before us? Council comments or questions? Greg, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to note for folks that are watching that there are some folks that raised questions at the last meeting with regard to compliance with prior construction and all of the requirements that came along with it. The landscaping was all in compliance with the planned unit development at that point. They did have some issues with regard to lighting that were taken care of. So it seems to me that everything was done right on the front end. When there were issues, they were handled. And I see no reason why it should hold us back from moving forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Rich, please.
Yeah, 2 comments. First of all, I just want to give the people, the residents of Downers Grove and Darien Club some satisfaction in knowing that we have fully expect that Oak Trace will do the kind of berm work and landscaping to provide an adequate shield on the south side of their property. Another issue was I would like to just raise as a point. When I originally voted against this Phase 2 at the Plan Commission, the rationale was that I felt at the time that Oak Trace hadn't given proper notice to the residents who were living in the patio homes, and I would trust that they would give those people the right of first refusal in the Phase 3 to move into townhomes. So that's a concern I still share, and just wanted to go out and be on record as stating that publicly. Other than that, I plan to vote for this.
Thank you, Rich. What else? Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Colavani?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Takes us to item 8 on our agenda tonight. Item 8 is our first reading. These are subjects which we plan to either continue discussing from a prior meeting or begin discussing this evening. They are not subjects on which we plan to take final action tonight. They typically are discussion. And we'll hear from the audience as well as our colleagues and typically some staff professionals as well. That's over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Mayor Barnett. Only one item on tonight's first reading agenda. It is a consideration of intersection improvements at Prairie and Forest. Here to present information on this item is our Public Works Director, Andy Sikich.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I apologize. I have a lot of information to pack into this presentation. I will try to make it as succinct as possible. Tonight I'm presenting the Prairie and Forest traffic safety improvements. On this slide here, you can see that the intersection is just west of Main Street, approximately 300 feet from the traffic signal at Main and Prairie. The primary reason that we're bringing this before you tonight is the high number of accidents that have occurred at this intersection since 2015. 24 accidents occurred at the intersection between January 2015 and April of 2021, and there have actually been a couple since April. For context, this accounts for roughly 40% of the total accidents on Prairie between Pershing and Forest for that same time period. This here shows the distribution of accidents at the intersection, with the overwhelming majority of them involving vehicles on northbound Forest colliding with vehicles on eastbound Prairie. The contributing factors to most of these accidents appear to be traffic volume and speeds on Prairie, traffic volume on Forest crossing or turning onto Prairie, and sight distance obstructions primarily looking west from northbound Forest. I know it's hard to see, I apologize. This exhibit shows the most recent traffic counts and speeds. Consistent with our experience with other traffic counts that we've taken during the pandemic, these are about 10 to 20% lower than what we would normally expect to see. The 85 percentile speeds are all within 5 miles per hour of the posted speed limit, although based on anecdotal information, some drivers on Prairie go significantly faster than that to, quote unquote, catch the green light at the intersection at Main and Prairie. Traffic volumes on Forest, even during the pandemic, have remained quite high compared to the other side streets off of Prairie between Main and Belmont. Most of those other streets carry between about 300 and 1,000 vehicles per day, but Forest is consistently in the range of 2,000 vehicles per day or more. Prairie generally carries about 6,000 to 6,500 vehicles a day. This photo shows the view of a driver looking west when stopped at the stop sign on northbound Forest. This is not all that uncommon. Generally, people are supposed to stop at the stop sign to make sure there's no pedestrians, and then they move up to a location where they have a better sight view of any oncoming traffic. Many drivers, though, I'm sure you know, do not do this and will roll the stop sign to get that better view right off the bat. This slide here shows what that view looks like if you've moved up past the stop bar. You do get a better view, but as you can see, it's still obstructed with utility poles, electrical boxes, and some low trees. When residents first reached out to us regarding this intersection, the village initially responded by pruning the parkway trees to improve sight lines and deploying our driver speed feedback signs. On March 30th of this year, we held a neighborhood meeting, which was well attended by local residents. A petition was presented to staff representing 10 of the 17 households on the block of Forest south of Prairie and north of Franklin, requesting that northbound Forest be completely blocked at Prairie. At that meeting, staff presented some proposed improvements, which included a median on Prairie, some striping, and additional signage. And police presence and enforcement has also been increased at this location. This exhibit depicts what was initially proposed as the improvements, what they would look like. You can see that there was a center median, which would prevent traffic on Forest from crossing or turning left onto Prairie. And this would also provide traffic calming and additional pedestrian safety by acting as a refuge island for people crossing Prairie. Staff anticipated that these improvements would reduce speeds on Prairie, reduce the number and severity of collisions at the intersection, provide improved pedestrian safety, and reduce the traffic on Forest. In May, staff installed temporary improvements that simulated these proposed improvements. A median was constructed of water-filled barricades, and additional striping and signage was added. These improvements provided traffic calming on Prairie and prohibited those left turns and crossing Prairie. Immediately prior to the installation, baseline traffic counts and speeds were taken throughout the neighborhood. The intent was to leave the improvements up for about 60 days and then take another set of traffic counts to determine what effect the improvements were having on the neighborhood traffic flow. Unfortunately, we never got that chance as we had to remove the improvements after less than 2 weeks due to observed dangerous driving behaviors, which I'll go over in a minute. Even though we never got a chance to take those counts to quantify the resulting effects of the improvements, anecdotally it was observed that traffic on Prairie did generally slow down in the vicinity of the improvements, and the traffic volume on Forest was reduced. Unfortunately, though, it was the unanticipated consequences that caused us to remove the improvements prematurely. Drivers were observed making a left turn from northbound Forest into oncoming traffic on Prairie. They also were observed making a three-point turn, or making a right turn onto Prairie and then making a three-point turn around the median to head back west again. And a significant number of drivers rolled through the stop sign onto Prairie without stopping. This is a short video compilation. Yeah, the bottom left hand. This was actually provided to us by one of the residents who has been most engaged with staff on the project, showing just some of the very dangerous driving behaviors that occurred during that trial period. You can see there's a very clear and obvious no left turn and one-way signage. And it's pretty apparent that these drivers make a conscious decision to pull into oncoming traffic to make that prohibited left-hand turn. This is a compilation. These people didn't do this one after another, so it wasn't that bad.
Same hour.
So that brings us to where we are currently. Staff has developed a list of possible recommended options for this intersection, all with certain anticipated benefits and disadvantages. The three primary options identified by staff are stop signs, either a three-way or a four-way, right in, right out on Forest, or permanent closure of Forest at Prairie. The last two options could be applied to just the south leg of Forest or to both the south and north legs of Forest. In addition to these primary options, additional striping and signage will be added, sight lines will be improved to the extent possible, and if so desired by the council, additional traffic calming could also be added to Prairie, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. I'm going to walk through these one by one. A four- or three-way stop could be added at this location. In the three-way scenario, westbound Prairie would not stop, similar to the intersection at Forest and Franklin, just south of here. Either of the two stop sign options has the anticipated benefits of reducing angled collisions, reducing speeds on Prairie in the immediate vicinity of the intersection, reducing, sorry, I lost my place. Oh, and left turns could once again be allowed from Prairie onto southbound Forest, which they are currently prohibited. The anticipated disadvantages of a stop sign are possible traffic backups onto Prairie, which could potentially also impede traffic on Main in the four-way scenario, a possible increase in traffic on Forest, increased noncompliance, possible increase in rear-end collisions, and also possible driver confusion in the three-way scenario. These images depict what each stop sign scenario would look like. On the left is that three-way option, and on the right is the four-way. Option two is to restrict Forest to a right-in, right-out scenario. This could be applied to just the south leg or to both legs. The anticipated benefits of this approach would be a reduction in angled collisions, some traffic reduction on Forest, a possible increase to pedestrian safety, especially if it was coupled with some additional traffic calming on Prairie, such as a median or some bump outs. The potential disadvantages of this option include increased noncompliance, changes to the neighborhood traffic patterns, a possible increased risk of the dangerous driving behaviors similar to what we saw during the trial, and possible impacts to emergency service vehicle access and modifications to snow and ice removal operations. So this slide here shows what a right-in, right-out would look like using the traditional pork chop island. Again, this could be done just to the south like is shown or to both. This depicts some additional traffic calming as well, which could be employed along with this option, which would help slow traffic on Prairie and provide additional pedestrian safety. This exhibit, which looks familiar, shows what a right-in, right-out option would look like with the originally proposed median. And in this scenario, we would recommend extending that median further west and further east to help deter some of those dangerous driving behaviors that we observed. Extending the median would also start to impact some driveways on Prairie, which would effectively make them also right in, right out. So the third option is to completely close Forest at Prairie. Again, this could be done to just the south leg or to both, and the anticipated benefits of this option are a high reduction in angled collisions, increased pedestrian safety, particularly in the east-west direction, but again, if it was coupled with traffic calming, it would also be in the north-south direction, and a significant reduction in traffic on Forest. The potential disadvantages of this option are significant changes to neighborhood traffic patterns, possible impact to emergency service access, significant modifications to snow and ice removal operations, and in this case in particular, the south leg of Forest would go from a priority 1 route to a priority 3 snow route. In addition, speeds on Prairie would likely increase unless some additional traffic calming measures were employed, and there is insufficient space to install a standard turnaround. This exhibit here shows what a cul-de-sac would look like on the south leg of Forest. The maximum diameter would be around 50 feet, and the village's current standard minimum cul-de-sac is 60 feet, although there are a small number of substandard cul-de-sacs within the village, so this would not be the first one. It would be difficult for larger trucks, such as fire trucks and snowplows, though, to turn around on this bulb. Here, as you can see, a photo on the left there, that's approximately a 50-foot cul-de-sac bulb. And then the picture on the right there is a turnaround called a hammerhead, which could also potentially be utilized in this location. So I'll talk about those couple of additional options that could potentially be added to any of the primary options. The first one would be to replace the signal heads on the west leg of the traffic signal at Main and Prairie with what are called programmable signal heads. I'm sure you've all seen these. These can be adjusted so that motorists can't tell if they are red or green until they're a certain distance from the stoplight. So what that prevents is it prevents people from seeing that it's green 2 or 3 blocks away and speeding up to try and hit that green light. So potential disadvantages, it could create some driver confusion if they don't either see that there is a stoplight there or they don't, maybe they think it's not functioning because they can't tell if it's red or green. And the other option that I've mentioned multiple times, this could be added to any of the other options as well, and it includes traffic calming on Prairie in the form of either a center median like you see or bump outs, which generally they shorten the distance that pedestrians have to cross, or the center median would provide a pedestrian refuge island so that pedestrians only have to cross 1 lane of traffic at a time. It also would provide traffic calming, slowing the traffic down on Prairie. So this is just a quick little summary slide of all of the options I just went through. This item was presented to the TAP Commission on July 14th. TAP's recommendation was to close both the north and south legs of Forest at Prairie, add additional traffic calming measures on Prairie at this location, and add programmable signal heads on the eastbound side of the signal at Prairie and Main. TAP also recommended that the traffic flow from and to Forest between Warren and Franklin be assessed to optimize neighborhood traffic flow and maximize the use of Main Street, and that District 99 should be consulted to ensure that the pickup and drop-off patterns at North High are coordinated with the improvements. Finally, TAP recommended that any improvements should be installed temporarily at first to simulate the proposed improvements so that their effectiveness and overall impact on neighborhood traffic can be evaluated prior to final improvements being designed. And with that, I will open it up to any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Andy. Anybody from the audience want to speak on this subject? If so, come on down to the podium, tell us what's on your mind. All right, we can come back. We'll kick it around here and then we'll come back.
I'm gonna stay real quick, because this is why I came.
You seem a little bashful tonight, Scarlatti.
Steve Scarlatti again. I can say almost unanimously. I mean, one of the concerns that when they had this discussion was, would we like that on Forest? Would we be upset that we have to go south to go north? South, whether we have to go south to go east, west, or north, right? We don't mind. Almost unanimously. We have been having this difficulty and this problem with the amount of traffic on our street for not just a few years, not all of you were here, but when we did this 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we came and said, this is ridiculous. The amount of traffic, the accidents that we would see and hear. You'll sit in your backyard and you'll hear it. And you'll say, okay, call. My daughter was hit on her bike at that intersection. We've seen any number of incidents of near misses at that intersection that aren't reflected in your numbers. The screeching of tires, and when you hear the tires, everybody braces, and then if there's no impact, there's no impact. But far too often there is impact. I didn't want to say anything unless somebody else stood up and said, no, we disagree with it, to rebut them. But I don't think anybody disagrees with this, at least not on our area forest. So we would wholly endorse that you put the block on forest. You're accomplishing a bunch of things by closing off forest. We can't get out of our driveways during the business. On COVID, it's been slow. But during the business, during rush hour, I can't get out of my driveway. And that's a long block. And they come off of that stop sign at Franklin, and they are going so fast that there's no gap between the cars, even though they've got a stop sign. You cannot get out unless you just jump out and then they honk their horn and yell at you. More often than not, they're piled up at the stop sign, and if you go with just a right in, right out, you're going to have cars starting to pile up on Forest, particularly when that light turns red on Prairie, because there's going to be nowhere for them to go on Forest. They can't go straight, they can't go left, they're all waiting to go right. They pile up, they don't stop and let you out of your driveway. They're just sitting there waiting, and you're sitting with your back to the street waiting for the traffic to clear so you can get out of the driveway. And there's any number of times you can't. So you're accomplishing a lot by closing that off. There's some and I know you guys have looked at this, if the timing, the original plan of that was the S bypass of Main Street, Franklin, south on Forest. That used to be a no stop before you put that light in. Then you decided, okay, we're going to put the light in at Franklin and Prairie, and it's going to allow people heading north to come up Forest, take a right on Franklin, and have the light to go left. Unfortunately, that is so ill-timed that you turn left, if you can turn left onto Franklin during the school year, during rush hour, there's no crossing for the kids. That's where they cross at Franklin. By the time they get the kids across, the cars never got to go left. If you can improve that, if you're going to improve the coordination of traffic and the students crossing, you could get a lot of that traffic off of Forest, and you wouldn't need it. And that would solve the problem of your traffic pattern once you close Forest off. Because otherwise they're going to keep coming up Forest, and you're going to still have all those accidents. It's brutal to listen to in the summer when you hear the tires screeching, then you hear the impact, then you hear the sirens, and everybody's coming out to look to see, is somebody dead yet? And I'm actually amazed at how fast they're coming down Prairie and how many cars are jutting out into that traffic off of Forest that somebody's not dead yet. Or that there's not a kid who tried to cross that street there isn't dead yet. My daughter missed it by about a half a second because the car that hit her clipped the back end of her bike. And if he had hit as fast as he was going, the bike went about 30 yards, she went about 20 yards. But the car did not hit her, it only hit her back tire. Had it been another second, she would be gone. And that's what needs to be fixed. And that is what a dead end would do for us. It would fix the traffic, it would fix the safety. And as long as nobody else is opposed, go for it.
Vito Siciliano at 4808 Forest Avenue. What Steve said, we were here over 20 years ago to the council, and we brought this to them because it was very concerning for us. What they gave us, what they did is they came back, when we came back after the first meeting, they evaluated and they hired an outside source to come in and look at our area and to decide how we could help in this situation, this outside source. What they gave us is no left turn for traffic going west on Prairie onto Forest. That sign, you might as well take them down. They turn left all day long. And they shoot down our street, either going south or going north. And it's out of control. I'm serious about it. I would love for any of you, come sit on our porch. Come during the morning, stay on it all day long. It doesn't matter what time. There's people speeding all day long. Now, we know Prairie is terrible, and it's mentioned many times, the speed that's going of traffic of drivers going down Prairie Avenue, east and west. But nobody's mentioning how fast traffic is flying down Forest from Franklin to Prairie. It's unbelievable, 1 block. And I'm telling you, you're looking at 35 to 45 miles an hour. There are people, drivers, passing other drivers to get around them. 1 block. It's out of control. Now, I'm not, pointing the finger at anybody. They gave us a left turn, and we went, okay, well, we didn't get anything, but we got that. Let's see what happens. That was ridiculous, and it is still to this day. We're talking over 20 years we're going through this. And the accidents, I know Steve got into those accidents. There are accidents that I witnessed that they literally went up onto people's property. So forget about the parkway, they passed that. And I don't know if Gary's here or can't think of the other guy's name. But both of those neighbors sitting on those corners had vehicles all the way up practically to their house. Gary, that day his kids were playing outside. From that day on, this is over 20 years ago, from that day on, those kids had to play in the backyard always, and they have. So, I mean, it's kind of, when you live on that block and you see what's going on, like Steve said, when you hear the screeching, and we grab a phone right away, just call 911. We know it's an accident right at that corner. So, I just want to make sure the council and mayor knows it's not only Prairie that these cars are speeding. Yes, they are speeding on Prairie. But boy, we got it coming down Forest. And road rage, it's out of control. So please, look at blocking that street off. And yes, the lights at Franklin and Main and Prairie and Main, they're not synced. When the light goes green to let traffic go north off of Franklin onto Main, the light at Prairie turns red. And these drivers are used to our street. They know it. So that's why they're racing down our street to try to make that light. And if that light's red, they race down 47 and turn on Chicago Avenue to fly over to Main. It's out of control. The blocking of that street and then having people do that S-curve off, going northbound on Forest and make them turn onto Franklin and then onto Main, that's your success. And hopefully people aren't going to start going left on Franklin and shoot down there to try to go down the side streets. So you have to do something with that. So if you got, what I'm trying to give you is that S-curve. And you got it going south, but you need it going north also. My opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Nancy Svoboda, and I wasn't here, I was here for the League of Women Voters. But I live presently on Florence, and I have lived on Elm Street, and I have lived on Sealy in that northwest section. And so I'm not in the immediate neighborhood as these gentlemen have just spoken, but it is a problem area. You know, I've lived here decades, it's an issue, and I'm so glad you're looking at it. I'm happy to hear this presentation, and I'm in support of doing something about the problem. I don't live in the neighborhood, but I know it's a problem. I'm a safe driver. And one other thing about the driving, it was mentioned how fast people speed on Prairie. Fairview is just as bad. It is, I live in that area, it's difficult to get across the street because people will speed so badly. Rolling stops is a problem too. But thank you for handling this area at Forest.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in?
Hi, my name's Karen Leo, and I live in the 4600 block of Forest Avenue. We've been there for 27 years. I've been in Downers Grove my whole life, 66 years, and a retired teacher from District 58. I want to start off with many of the people on Forest are friends of mine, and I'm not up here to talk bad or make any wedges between us. But being farther down closer to the high school, we too also see a lot of different things, and I definitely agree with all of you. We do need to do something at Prairie and at Forest. All of the options, my least favorite is to close the street before we would try any of the others. It seems as though there's a big problem with the cars going east and west. And so I think there should possibly be some stop signs added in all along Prairie somewhere to slow people down. That would definitely help. We had a stop sign added at Lincoln and Prairie years ago, and that is a four-way stop now, and it has definitely helped the speeding coming down in front of our house at 4608. So we're 2 houses from Lincoln, and that has helped, stop signs. At the last meeting, everyone pretty much were saying that stop signs would not help along the way. Oakwood, we do have a crossing for the children coming to Pierce Downer, and there's a cross woman there who's been there forever, and it would be nice to maybe see something there where the children cross. It's at the top of a hill. Like I said, I'm going to go back to my notes. I do agree that we're all on the same page, that something has to be done. What it is that I'm not really 100% sure what the best thing is, and I love the fact that you do want to make a trial of things. And one thing that I do ask, that when you do the trial, is that you do it when school is in session, because that's when the traffic is unbearable in front of the blocks between Chicago and Lincoln. We have a parking lot in front of us. We are in gridlock. We have people pulling in our driveways to pick up their children, and we can't get out. We can't get in our driveways either. We have people stopped in front of us. We can't get out that way either. People not letting us bump into the line. They're too worried about getting their kids to school because they're going to be late. Another instance, I want to say, Vito, come to my porch, because one time I was pulling out of my driveway to go to school, to work, and sitting on my porch were 3 guys passing a joint. And other ones are in between the houses smoking their last cigarette. So we have people that are coming across to us, and we have people coming the other way, and it is a zoo. It's an absolute zoo, and I'm not making that up. I rolled my window down and said, what are you doing? They've got up and walked away. So, I mean, it's a problem for the whole block. And in addition to that, I really would love for you to consider not just that block, right there where the accidents are happening. Because if you do block that off, I think of it as a river. Right now it is a forceful river. And yes, cars are going way too fast. If you block that off, where is all that water going to go? Yes, Main Street. It's going to go to Main Street. It's going to come down Chicago. It's going to come down Lincoln. It's going to go for people to get to the school. Then I think they talked about maybe making that Main Street be 1 lane somewhere. So if we push more to Main, it's going to cause more problems there also. I would love for all of you to take a trip around the area there and see what happens, because I think visually looking at it, You will see, yes, there's a lot going on over there that a lot of people don't know about. And again, I support them. I am not here, something has to be done for sure. And I think I look at my notes here. I think you have to take into play, there's also Herrick and there's also Pierce Downer. So in the morning, if you try to go towards those schools, you cannot get through. We tutored, my daughter tutored during the school year to get over there. We couldn't even get to my nephew's house. I mean, it was just, it's like gridlock everywhere you go already. And I think, if you think about, I brought up at the last meeting, Prince has been taken out of the picture for drop-off. The buses do go all the way down into the new parking area. And that whole street right there, I don't understand why that couldn't be a drop-off. The buses are all going into the parking lot. That street is pretty much open. Sherman also, to the north of the tennis courts, has been made one way through the years. And that's for parking, for the kids to park, but then cars only can go one way there. Prince has been knocked a dead end because they pushed the football field back. So the high school's pushing us out, and then everybody's pushing in on us. And I feel frustrated. You know, when my kids were little, I didn't let them go outside during those hours because of all the traffic and how unsafe it was. So I just want to hope that you take into consideration all of us, and not just there, but all around, and what impact it's going to have for many, many other people. Other people aren't going to like cars coming down Prince. Other people aren't going to like, and it's not so much, I think the speed is a problem. Possibly speed bumps could be put into play, and I know that's a problem for shoveling, for the snow removal and everything like that, but something's got to slow the people down on Forest, and something's got to slow the people down on Prairie, you know, and elsewhere. How can we do that and make everybody happy? You know, I think when those orange things went up, we had no idea. We had no communication to what that was. My husband and I were like, what's that? You know, and I think that's what a lot of people did. They got to it like, well, what are we supposed to do here? What is that? I think communication needs to be brought to the high school, to us, to you, and make us know what is going on around in the areas. I think if we communicate with the high school too, maybe they can possibly communicate to the people, maybe specified more drop-off spots, maybe more drop-off spots a little bit farther out from the school, so not everybody's trying to get in and other people are trying to get through.
Karen, we're going to have more chances. Let's let everybody get in here.
Did I talk my 5 minutes?
Yep.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much. But once a teacher, always a teacher, right, Bob? Thank you. And once again, I am not here to cause any grief with any of the people. You know, if the block gets cut off, I hope I'm invited to your block parties.
Hey, before we go any further, guys, I want to just say something here. Trees, sidewalks, traffic, stormwater. Affects everybody's lives, and everybody takes it very personally. And they should. This is not a criticism. But we're trying to, as you can already hear, this group is going to be charged with trying to find some kind of a balance that is not obvious. It's obvious to one person, and then you look at it from a different angle, and it's not so obvious anymore. So, no debates back and forth. Hold the applause. There isn't a right answer here. What there is a lot of information that this group's going to try and digest. And we really do understand that it's super personal to everybody. We totally get that. Every one of us has similar situations. Those subjects always come up. They always elicit emotions, and that's a good thing because it means everybody cares. That's awesome. At least you guys care enough to push this, right? But just keep it to tell us what's on your mind and then keep moving kind of thing, okay? Please.
I promise I will be very brief. My name is Angie Winslow. I live in the 4800 block of Forest Avenue. So I'm about a half a block from the problem intersection. And I think we got a little derailed on what we're supposed to be talking about. The issue is Forest and Franklin and the accidents that happened there and the speed problems on Forest and Franklin. Prairie and Forest. So we're not here to talk about north drop-offs. We're not here, no matter what we do, option 1, 2, or 3, we still have just as many people dropping off at north. That's not what we're here to talk about. That's an issue to take up with the school board about drop-offs changing. So we're here. I just want to make sure we're focused on really what we're supposed to be talking about tonight, and that's causing or doing what we can to stop the accidents and the danger in our area. And I can attest to what Vito said, the speeds on our block. We have 2,500 cars on our block, and by the time they get to where Karen lives, there are 300 on the block. So our block is a big issue, and that's why all of us here tonight are in favor of blocking off. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brian Erickson, and most of you have seen an email come through from me over the past couple months, but I first want to start by thanking the Public Works so much, the Police Department, and all of you for your attention to this matter over the past year and a half or so. I think, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned not to reiterate points along the way to, draw out time, so I'll do my best not to repeat things that have already been stated, but just to reiterate some of your points, which was your council is here to provide safety and, keep the safety of the committee or the town at first and foremost front of mind. The fact that there have been so many accidents at that intersection, the fact that only inches away from hitting somebody catastrophically has occurred, I want to also make mention that the accident counts do not reflect those that actually occurred on the block of forest itself. For instance, there was an accident that occurred with a neighbor backing into his driveway that isn't captured in the intersection accident logs, but as a direct result of the speed and the frequency of cars on Forest Avenue, we have a significant challenge. And to draw attention to the great presentation Andy put together, there were a number of options. Only one of them had an emphatic benefit of pedestrian safety being increased. One of them didn't even mention it. That was option one. Option two said possible increase in pedestrian safety, which you could argue because by adding 4 stop signs, I've researched this for quite a bit of time, stop signs only work when there is a comparable amount of traffic going east and west and north and south, which is why the stop signs probably worked well at Lincoln and Forest or wherever, because the traffic amounts were comparable. When you would address a stop sign, there would be an equal car coming from the other direction. By having 6,000 cars cross Prairie in each direction and only 2,000 cross Forest, there's going to be a all too frequent amount of times when the cars don't necessarily pass each other, so people will get in a habit of not stopping because there isn't a car there until there's a kid there riding a bicycle on the sidewalk, which option 3 addressed. There was no possible. Possible was removed. It was only an increase in pedestrian safety. So, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned that there is no right or wrong answer. There's a lot of, possibilities. But in the meeting that Andy referenced with the TAP Commission, it was a unanimous vote. Unanimous. People weren't undecided. Unanimous. The only thing that is going to make the pedestrians of this city safe is to close off that street. And I appreciate all of your time here today, and certainly appreciate the increased police presence at the intersection and also all the work that Andy and his team have done. You guys have been great, and we truly, as residents of Forest, the 4800 block, can't thank you enough.
Okay. One more? Oh, okay. All right. What are we thinking? What's on our mind? What kind of questions does council have? Andy, you want to come back up in case we want to grill you a little bit? Anybody got any comments or questions, or want to start a conversation?
Yeah, I've got a
Leslie, go ahead.
I have a couple questions. I'm really struggling with this one. Coming into this meeting, I was leaning towards stop signs with potentially bump outs. I'd like to see bump outs anyway, but that's a side note. But now I feel like I'm kind of back at stage one. Is there any way that we could get more information, and I don't expect this now, about the impact on emergency services, and also a little bit more about how we think traffic patterns would change if we were to close off that portion of Forest? So to see if, traffic is shifting elsewhere, if we're just moving a problem from Forest to another road, I'm not really interested in doing that.
And that's why we would recommend doing it on a temporary basis, because, fortunately in this area, it's a gridded system.
Right.
Which is a benefit, because you can kind of disperse traffic a little more evenly.
Right.
So, if you closed off Forest and all of that traffic that currently takes Forest either goes over to Main or is dispersed pretty uniformly throughout the grid, that's great.
Okay.
If it all just moves to Prince, then we've just moved the problem one block west.
Yeah.
And I think that, just like the unanticipated consequences of our trial, I think until we try it, we won't really know what's going to happen. So I think the trial would be the best way.
Okay. And then just outside of that, like I mentioned, I just would like to see more pedestrian bump outs and medians throughout the village as we do some of these projects, because it really does increase pedestrian safety, and it's just a good practice. So that's all I have.
Rich?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Can an average automobile make a turnaround in a 50-foot cul-de-sac without having to do a three-point turn?
Yeah. Yes. I've done it in smaller than 50 in a car. It's mostly truck traffic that has a problem.
Okay. And then considering this is sort of on the way to a major hospital, Trauma One Hospital, Good Samaritan, have we looked at the impact of closing this road in that regard for fire, ambulance, things of that nature?
I believe most of the ambulances are using Main Street primarily when they go to, but the reason it says possible impact to emergency services, I believe that it could be designed to allow emergency services to still get through there if they had to, but we haven't looked in that in-depth in design yet.
Okay. And I didn't notice anything about speed bumps on Forest as an option. Do we have a position on those in Downers Grove?
We haven't had a position on them. I know, generally speaking, speed tables, we have a few around town. On a street like Prairie, there's too much traffic to put them out. On a street like Forest, we could potentially look at that, but they generally just tend to slow people down at the speed table, and then they speed up between them, they jam their brakes on, they speed up between them, they jam their brakes on. So there are some serious pros and cons to speed bumps and speed humps, speed tables.
Pretty much every side street in Chicago has them, and that's exactly what happens, but at least they have to slow down. Speaking from experience. Mm-hmm. And I'll have some other comments later.
Anyone else want to jump in?
No question.
Go ahead, I have a question too. Go ahead.
I was saying I don't have any.
Oh,
I didn't want to jump in too fast. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Just a quick question. I know one of the residents here brought up that option one of the benefits does not include increase in pedestrian safety. I'm just wondering if that was accidentally left off or overlooked, or if we truly see no benefit to increase in pedestrian safety with option one with the stop signs.
It wasn't intentionally left off. I think there might be a slight increase in pedestrian safety. Sometimes they can be kind of a false sense of security kind of situation. But I do think a stop sign would potentially increase pedestrian safety slightly.
Okay, but maybe not as much as the other options.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
You mentioned that sight lines could be improved. Could you be more specific on what the thoughts there that haven't been tried already?
Sure. So we've started the process of talking to ComEd about looking at these overhead utilities and those boxes and what it would take to put them underground for this block. That's a lengthy, costly process.
Yeah.
But we've at least started the conversation with them about it. So that would be one thing. And then the only other item would be relocating those little parkway trees. Because they're so short, because they're underneath those overhead lines, that we plant the little ones under the power lines, and so unfortunately you get the negative benefit of having them be kind of in the sight lines more than a bigger tree.
Yeah, I think based on your photo of someone at the stop sign, it's also that there is a tree there on the resident's property and some shrubs there. I'm just curious as to what, or if any consideration was put to that.
On private property, no.
Yeah.
And this is not an uncommon situation. If you drive up and down Prairie, it's fairly, because the sidewalks are set so far back, it's not uncommon. So people do generally have to creep up to get sight distance. It's just when you do that here, you still don't have a great view westbound.
Thank you.
Danny?
I got a quick question. I don't mean to throw another option into the mix, but did you guys consider, I feel like most of the traffic is coming from across the train tracks. Did we consider a pork chop on Franklin to go right hand only on Franklin?
No, we didn't consider that. I'm trying to think if it was one of the...
That would keep those 2,000 cars from going up, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look at that. I don't remember if that was one of the things that we analyzed. We did look at some one-way options that weren't great, but like a right only.
That would veer those people over to Main Street.
Yeah, we could possibly look at that.
Yeah, we took a look at that at one of our first staff meetings. I don't know if Andy had joined us yet, so we can dig up those notes. We did take a look at it, so we can throw that in the mix.
Possibly in conjunction with the bump outs on Prairie. That's it.
Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. Kind of in keeping with what Commissioner Glover was talking about and some of the other comments that have been made, I think we have to be worried about the potential ripple effects here. If this, in my opinion, if this traffic wanted to be on Main Street, it would be on Main Street already. The idea that if we block off the forest at Prairie, that suddenly all of these people are going to be on Main Street, I think is a pipe dream. What's going to happen is they're going to turn onto Franklin to take Prince to go back to Prairie to continue north on Forest. Essentially taking somebody's, well, you can disagree with me all you want, but
Hey, guys, stop.
If this traffic wanted to be on Main Street, it'd be there already. So I think what we have to think through is whether we're taking the problem that's on Forest and turning it into Prince's problem, and then potentially another section of Prairie. So yeah, I think we've got to be careful in choosing the most dramatic option first, because I think we're going to have a lot of unintended consequences. So from my point of view, we've got problems with crashes, we've got problems with traffic. Those are unmistakable. But I think what we've got to do is start with traffic calming both on Prairie and on Forest, and go to either a 3 or 4-way stop. The 3-way stop kind of concerns me a little bit, just because I think you're going to have a lot of folks that just find it confusing. I'm not a big fan of the 3-way that we've got just south of there. But I think you've got to walk before you run. Let's figure out what the least impactful way is to handle it before going to something like blocking off a street, which is something that, frankly, we've done once in my time up here, and it was going on to 55th Street, which is a heck of a lot different than Prairie. I think going to as dramatic an option as closing a street is the wrong thing to do right out of the box. Thank you.
Some of my thoughts come from the point that, I don't know exactly who made the comment, but that you might as well not have the no left turn sign because people turn so often. Those that have watched and listened and had the pain of listening to me talk about traffic up here for a long time, I couldn't agree more. I think that signage is just not that effective. I mean, a lot of people do pay attention to sign, but every time I come south on 50 or on Main Street heading to 55th and I see the don't turn through the neighborhoods between rush hour and think, yeah, until you all of a sudden look at brake lights and then you do. I mean, it's not just those guys, right? It's all of us. If we think about our own driving habits all over town, when we're not in front of our house, we're hustling. We're busy, distracted, not paying attention, trying to go too fast. Everybody in town. So this problem is clearly demonstrably a situation at that intersection that's different and worse. But you look at the work we tried to do on Claremont, that was several years ago, but it was an effort to try and stop an expressway from happening across from, Maine to Fairview on Claremont. We did some work on Carpenter Street, which is another one of these bypasses, the same kind of thing, right? People trying to avoid Main Street and get around downtown, which is exactly what's going on here. This problem is one that exists in a lot of places. I think another example is, when we closed Cumner, right? All of a sudden Florence became an expressway for people trying to get to the train station off of 55th Street. We do, with a grid system, we do tend to push problems around. I feel more comfortable with the idea of something physical involved here. If we're going to try and move traffic, I don't know what that looks like or where we move it to, but I think that signage is not sufficient to me. It has to be more than that. One of the notes I had was south end of the 4800 block, and I was thinking the same thing Danny was. If a lot of this traffic is people heading from across the tracks going northbound, and we wish they were on Main, what kinds of things can we do to make that easier for them to do? I think, I kind of agree with Greg. If you just close it, I think you're going to just move them around. But if we make it easier and more logical for people to drive on Main Street, that would be a plus. So I'd like to know more about that conversation, Dave, and what our thoughts were along those lines. The other thing is, whatever happens here, I think Leslie was talking about it, enhancing the pedestrian safety, whatever happens here, is likely if we do it with bump outs, if we do it with marked crosswalks, if we do it, I think when you look down Maple Avenue, right, Maple is something like 8,800 cars. But when you look down it, it's like every block, there's a marked crosswalk and a center sign. Those kinds of things will help slow people down. And so whatever we end up with here, I think we need to look at not only this intersection, but a couple others along Prairie. Prairie is a highway. And nobody really wants the highway at that point in town. The other thing I was thinking, looking at that picture with the sight lines, we talk about those trees, don't we make it a little worse on ourselves? Not on ourselves, but doesn't Prairie go uphill a little bit west?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so,
Yes.
so that makes the tree sightline situation even worse, right?
Yeah.
I think Prairie's, it's not huge, but it starts to head up, grade up a little
Yeah.
bit there. So I don't know if those, how people are going to react to the idea of no trees in the between the sidewalk and the curb, but it seems like that also would be something we should be talking about here. So I haven't told you what to do. I'm just kind of processing this, but I would like to know a lot more about what the conversations along that south end and the idea of getting people on Franklin. If it was successful, right? If you took 2,200 cars, you moved them to Franklin, just for everybody's understanding of how we're trying to think through stuff, here's another way of framing that up. We got them off of Forest, right? Yeah, we just put 2,200 cars next to a kid's playground. I mean, this is not as isolated as everybody wants it to be. So just everybody please be thoughtful about all those things. The speeds, Andy, you mentioned, I think you mentioned they were within 5 miles an hour of the posted limits. But those were COVID measurements, is that right?
Right.
So, okay, do we have any intention to do a new measurement before we do anything, so we have a starting point that we think might be closer?
We could.
I would think if we do anything temporary, I would think we'd try and stage it in such a way that we'd have a Downers North fully in session period of measurement beforehand kind of thing. So for me, that would help me understand the impact better.
We plan on doing that. School starts on August 13th, I think, for North High. So we're tracking that. We'll get some before numbers of whatever. Non-COVID, I guess, wherever we are in that phase with our masks on today.
We're closer to non-COVID.
But with an open school. So we'll have some baseline data for you.
Okay. Anything I want to know more? Rich, you got some other stuff?
Yeah, I've got some comments here. First of all, traffic is very much like squeezing a water balloon. And you squeeze in one place, it pops out in another place. And I think we have to look at this, first of all, a very serious problem. The number of accidents in that period of time is totally unacceptable. I've seen and more importantly heard the crashes on the videos. It's just horrendous to hear that screech and then that terrible metallic crunch. So this is an interrelated problem, but I also think we need to dissect it down to the individual problems. We have an excess speed problem on Prairie, which I believe we have to solve physically. And signs don't work, but if you narrow a roadway and make it, people feel less safe by driving fast, they will drive less fast. That's just, a proven fact when it comes to traffic calming. So I think we should be dramatic about that. We have ways to slow down traffic on Forest that we should consider. One of the challenges we have is that even though we refer to this as a side street, it's not your typical side street. It's one of only 6 crossings across the Burlington Northern tracks, and that's why we have 2,000 cars living in the southwest section of Downers Grove. We and our neighbors are very familiar with how you get north to things like Good Samaritan and the businesses and all of that. It seems preferable to turn it on to Franklin, but then we also have a situation where we're perhaps mixing 2,000 more cars with a bunch of children who go to school there and have to cross the street, and not having those lights synchronized and interchanged to relieve that traffic and not create a pedestrian versus car scenario is, we would be remiss if we didn't handle that problem. And then also, where are you feeding cars northbound on Main Street, and what happens to that light? So I think it's a number of problems. I am concerned that that we could be diverting the cars onto Prince, which is a brick street, typically not made for this kind of traffic. And, with those volumes grow from the current number of 300 to some larger factor. I don't know how many those cars that are heading northbound head over to Saratoga and over to Ogden. That's a more complete traffic study. I'm not suggesting we hold off on the solutions, but I am in agreement with whatever we do, we try, so the unintended consequences do show up in reality. I was shocked when I saw the videos of the temporary barriers. Never would have dreamed in my wildest imagination. And I guess if I was a cop, I would have just written tickets all day long there to get the word out. If you do that on Forest and Prairie, you're going to get a ticket every single time. So it's a problem we're serious about. It's a problem we're going to address one way or another. But let's make sure we try it first so we don't screw it up.
Are we inside yet, or?
Yeah, we'll come back. We'll make another pass. One of the things that I wanted to just make sure people are thinking about too is the idea of enforcement. I'm glad to hear that folks are feeling like there's been an increased enforcement, but that we can't be thinking that's a solution. It's just not possible. If you look at the number of police officers we have and the number of miles of street in town, that's not real. The fact is that's whack-a-mole, and it goes on when there's a group that's got a problem and there's been an immediate incident, and then there'll be another group with another problem and an immediate incident. So enforcement is not part of this solution from my perspective. So it is a debate. It is not a debate. It is a discussion. We don't usually come back. There's a lot of people here that didn't speak the first time around. So I guess I want to open this one more time, but I'd like 2 things. I'd like you to not do it again if you already have, because we've heard from people, and be conscious about repeating things, okay? I don't think you can watch this meeting and think folks up here aren't listening. We hear you. So a couple more minutes of public conversation.
Good evening, guys. Tom Schroeder, 4815 Forest Avenue. I've been in Downers for 18 years now, and Bob, you and I go back, and some of the council members and I go back, and other people sitting here, Dave. I respect all of your time, and I've been through hundreds of these things. In a previous life, I ran an environmental consulting company for 21 years, and I sat through literally hundreds of these things. You guys are bombarded with new things every day. 1 minute it's this, 1 minute it's that. You guys have to somehow take the summary, digest it, vote on it, and move forward. So you're going to hear emotional testimony on both sides. You guys are going to have your own personal prejudices. What I'm going to ask you now is, you've hired Andy, who's got a staff who went to school for this. They've studied for 4, sometimes 6, sometimes 8 years to study this kind of stuff. I'm asking you to listen to what he's recommending, What he recommended was option 3, and it's a temporary basis. So if you don't like what happens with the disbursement of traffic, or if somebody on the 4600 block is inconvenienced because they can't come south now, they got to move over 1 block east to come down south to go to the town, all these things will be solved. But just give him the chance to do his job that you hired him to do, and just listen, and just see what happens. And Rich, you mentioned speed bumps. That does nothing for the count of cars, right? Chris, you mentioned what you did in Fairmount, turning right, putting those pork chops. I'm not going to say that I've done it, but I've seen hundreds of people just pull out and turn left anyways and go east on 55th Street. They don't work. Signage doesn't work. Options 1 and 2 do not work. Okay, we're talking about people potentially dying here, tons of accidents. I'm not going to go through it again. But all I'm saying is just take the emotion out of it. Listen to the recommendation from staff, which is what you hired them for. Give it a shot. If it doesn't work, come back here and go back to the drawing board. Thank you.
Dave, do we have a recommendation from staff? We have a recommendation from TAP. I want to make sure we're clear on that.
We do not have a recommendation from staff. We have a recommendation from the Transportation and Parking Commission.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant.
Just making sure as we're creating records, that we're all clear.
The staff recommendation was embodied and put in place with the temporary improvements. We really were pretty high on that. And the driver behavior we observed, we share Commissioner Colavani's reaction.
Okay.
Brandon Gabriel, 4826 Forest, right smack dab in the middle of the street. I also previously lived at 4536 Main Street, so traffic volume, nothing really new, but the speed on that street, again, pretty ridiculous. And it's just important to note that majority of the traffic is northbound Forest traffic turning east, right? So if I'm going to avoid Main Street, I'm not going to go 2 blocks west to go 1 block north to go 2 blocks east to continue going north. I think if that's a concern, we could do no right turn signs. Something to that effect if we're worried about Prince, Saratoga, streets like that. And that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we got a list of questions and additional information that we need to get from our design team and our engineering crew. Anybody on the council have anything that popped in their head they want to ask about tonight yet? Nicole, please.
Nothing to ask, Mayor, but just wanted to thank all of the residents for coming out tonight and for sharing the videos. Some of those videos were incredibly difficult to watch. I know that this is a really emotional issue for everyone involved. I'm pretty positive when I say that all of us have been really thinking about this since we got the information. I feel like this is an incredibly tough thing to try and figure out. I actually drive northbound quite often, and I run northbound quite often. So this morning I ran Forest and Prairie at 7 a.m. and I drove it at 11:50 a.m. And then when I hit Prairie, I ran west. And the cars that come, if you're a street runner like myself, you have to hop on as quickly as possible to that sidewalk. And so I've done that a couple times since this issue has come to us because I wanted to experience it both ways as a pedestrian and as a driver. I think I do share some similar concerns to my colleagues about doing this to another street. I don't want that to take away from the severity of what's going on your street in front of your home and what you're experiencing yourselves and with your own children. So just please know, I think that we are all thinking very long and hard about what can make this work for your street and for the community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
That ends
we
our
have no other
reading
first
tonight.
reading items, correct?
That's correct. That's it. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, we're gonna go through item 9 on our agenda tonight. Hopefully, this will be brief. Council member reports. Opportunities for council members to report out on goings-on in the community, other organizations they're connected to. I'll start on the left. Dean,
No
you got
report,
anything?
thank you, Mayor.
Chris.
A couple quick things. Want to acknowledge and congratulate Tori Franklin, a Downers Grove South alumni. for participating in the triple jump event in Tokyo. While she's not bringing back a medal, it was really great to see a Mustang representing us in Tokyo. Confident there'll be more great things to come from Tori. August is also National Immunization Aware Month. I would humbly suggest the best way I can think to celebrate, please go get yourself vaccinated, and if you are already, encourage others to do so. COVID-19, and now the more dangerous Delta variant, is not the flu. In 2019, the influenza case fatality rate was 0.09. As of yesterday, the national case fatality rate of COVID-19 is 1.75. It's critical to protect our residents and neighbors by following the guidelines from the CDC and local health departments. Wear your masks, please, and get vaccinated. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg?
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Rich?
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Leslie?
Just want to echo what Commissioner Gilmartin said. Please get vaccinated and continue to wear your masks. Sadly, this is not over yet. That's it.
Cool.
Rotary Grove Fest is just around the corner, August 19th through 22nd. And given that the fest is entirely run by volunteers, we can never have enough volunteers. So if you would like to volunteer, you can go to rotarygrovefest.com/volunteer. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I have no report tonight. We have two more important agenda items coming up, which are presentations of long-range planning, strategic planning efforts from our Downtown Management Corporation and our Economic Development Corporation. We are going to take just a couple minutes here, 3 to 5 minute break. Give everybody a chance to breathe for a second, and we'll come back and start in on both those reports. Thank you.
Number of years, 14, I believe. And she's more than capable about talking about the history of our downtown. I'm going to take that part because I more love the part. I was a member of the downtown business community for about 12 years when the first special service area was created, SSA number 2. That was in the late 1990s. The TIF that produced the infrastructure updates, parking debt and other upgrades, I know you're up to speed, but they were created simultaneously, and the idea was to, while the main street for spring and summer was torn up and inaccessible, the businesses need help. So this SSA was created. And the next year, Curtis Street got the same treatment. There wasn't a parking deck at the time, and the businesses struggled. Besides the parking issues, there were pedestrian issues, safety issues. All of that communication, all of those concerns went through Linda Coonsey with the DMC. At that time, the retailers got creative. They were using back doors. They were, I want to say there was some delivery, I don't recall. But there was a spirit of, we're all in this together, let's fight through it, let's make this happen, this is going to be great once it's done. I do have, I'm going to call it construction debris, but there was a few folks that helped themselves to some bricks in front of the post office. So I got that with my Comiskey Park brick in Chicago Stadium. As you know, the SSA is effectively a voluntary tax agreed upon by the participants. Back in the late 1990s, there was a lot of angst. There were property owners that didn't want to do it, and they were adamant about it. There were petitions, and there was a lot of heated discussion. There were for and against signs displayed by different businesses and property owners. I wasn't a business decision maker at the time, but I did hold some sway, and we took a position of Switzerland. We're neutral. We're not a retailer at the time. I think 2 exceptions. What we now know as popular restaurants were retail locations. Ultimately, once it was all said and done, and it's demonstrated in the last couple of pages of our plan, the TIF, the creation of the DMC through the SSA, was a resounding success. So as we flash forward now to 2020, when the SSA and the DMC in reality was at expiration, we again went to the property owners and asked them to pay another voluntary tax to re-up the SSA. The idea, of course, was a little bit different. It was to continue what had been started and continue the momentum, which was basically, Aaron will touch on this, support a vibrant and authentic downtown. When, like there was 20 some odd years ago, the streets were closed and people weren't out because of the pandemic. And I saw the same things happen with the adapting and the pivoting and the businesses rallying together. We've got within our board talk of some cross promotions with some different businesses, which it's team building. And among the property owners, there was no angst, there were no heated discussions, and there were no petitions. It was all, yeah, we're in, we're game. Pre-COVID, there were a number of meetings. Special thanks to Mike Baker, who helped organize and lead those meetings. But there were meetings with various stakeholders so that there could be communication, the questions could be answered, their concerns could be aired, they could be addressed. And when we were done with that, there were no objections to the SSA number 11. A little bit about the process that we went through as a board. We formed 3 committees back in February. Finance, aesthetics, and marketing. As the leader of the group, as the chair, I asked for volunteers for the different committees. And having some experience with this before, I fully expected everybody to make sure their shoes were tied. But it didn't happen. It's like, no, I like plants, I like design, I want to be on this committee. I like numbers, I'm on the numbers committee. So everybody quickly jumped in and found a committee slot that worked for them. The committees met, the committees made presentations to our board. They were discussed at the board level, we reached a consensus, and we created a report that I am very proud of. I'm proud of those who contributed to it. And that's a bad ending, isn't it? That concludes where I'm at. And with that, I'll turn it over to our executive director and our main contributor, Erin Venezia.
Good evening. As Phil said, my name is Erin Venezia. I am the executive director for the Downers Grove Downtown Management Corporation. The mission statement of our organization really sums us up quite well. The Downers Grove Downtown Management Corporation is a nonprofit organization established to enhance and support business in an authentic and vibrant downtown Downers Grove. With that statement in mind, the board put together their strategic plan. Although an interesting task to plan for the future during such a time of uncertainty, we knew our mission remained clear. Our board identified 4 main areas of focus: attraction and retention, marketing and events, aesthetics, and finance and staffing. Although each has an independent role in the organization, they do all connect to our mission, and more often than not, they overlap. In doing the strategic plan, the 1-year goals were laid out as our action items from now through 2022. The board would like to create a formal year-round support local program to keep our community thinking downtown Downers Grove first. Support local initiatives will aid in the attraction and retention of our businesses. Another focus of the marketing will be to increase engagement of our local high school students and as many of the nearly dozen downtown Downers Grove events that we host. This engagement will enhance the sense of community as well as highlight their talent that we have right here in Downers Grove. The Aesthetics Committee is close to finalizing the implementation of the SSA number 2 Aesthetics Plan. In addition to the new planters, new pole banners, and the barrier covers, the committee is looking at ways to work with the village to hopefully increase our holiday decor. Financially, we will work at rebuilding our reserves. The majority of the reserves from our SSA number 2 were depleted to accelerate the aesthetics plan within the downtown. In addition, the Finance and Staffing Committee will be looking at a way to increase staff for the organization, which is currently staffed by 1 full-time and 1 part-time employee. We, as an organization, are looking forward to continuing our work to maintain and enhance a vibrant downtown for our businesses and residents to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you both. Anybody got any questions or comments they want to bounce off the crew here?
Yeah, we have a tendency now of people moving from Chicago into Downers Grove, perhaps sooner than they normally would have liked. And I'm wondering if there is any outreach to some of the more prominent restaurants in the neighborhoods downtown, like Logan Square, Wicker Park, Bucktown, to ask those owners if they'd like to move into the western suburbs as well, thinking that their prominence would also relate to a new segment of our community who's very comfortable, in many cases waiting in line for 45 minutes to get into one of those places. So I don't know if we've had any outreach, if that's something that we would consider.
Definitely something to consider. Within the last year or so, there's been no outreach to restaurants as they're reaching out to us, which is a good problem.
Yeah.
And we currently don't have a space for any. So, but yes, something in the future.
Which kind of is a segue to my next point. We've had a defined downtown business area. The Plan Commission and this council worked hard at that. Our boundaries are set. I don't see any reason to change those, but I would like to see more emphasis on businesses being located in the downtown business area in addition to just residential. I know this, we've had a lot of emphasis on driving the retail business to Main Street, but I'm hoping that we'd also have an emphasis of having businesses located on streets other than Main Street, much in the way Naperville does, where they don't rely on, their Main Street is not called Main Street, it's called Washington. And the street one block west of Washington is called Main Street, which is also very vibrant, and the cross streets like Jefferson and Chicago are also very vibrant. So I'd like to see us keep an eye to that as well, because without expanding our downtown business footprint, I don't think we need to, but I think we need to expand the businesses within that footprint, as opposed to, you know, just a residential situation.
Anyone else?
Just have a question on the student involvement that you pointed out. Can you share maybe sort of what your thoughts are there, or any ideas that you've had to do that? It seems like a good initiative, but are there any specifics that you can share or thoughts that you had on how to?
So we currently do use them, well, in the past, pre-COVID, and like our Fine Arts Festival for our entertainment one day, stuff like that. So maybe trying to get them more like live entertainment at different events for those. Possibly one example would be at the Fine Arts also giving a high school booth where they could enter a contest to display their art. Even creating like a different event, just kind of mainly bringing them in. So there's a few that are being thrown around in different ideas, but nothing concrete right now.
That's great.
All right, I've got a couple of things. On the aesthetic-related planning stuff, you mentioned the holiday decor and referenced some of the work that's already been done. I'd like to see a couple of things. I'd like to see part of that being, and I think it's commented on in the plan, which I don't have in front of me, but the idea of public art and what you guys can do to help facilitate such a thing. Obviously, a lot of the space that's public in the downtown is not yours, it's ours. But you guys can, because you're representing folks that are operating down there every day in and day out, and things like events and along those lines, you certainly could be taking a lead position in trying to figure out how that actually comes about. It undoubtedly would involve us to some degree, but it'd be great if you guys could push that. And on the more general aesthetics, some of my colleagues have heard me talking about this a little late. I think we need some pushing from you guys. We need to do our part on aesthetics downtown. We talk about decor and banners and coverings and planters, that's great. There's a lot more that could use some help. We did a lot of work 23 and a half years ago, and it's time. But again, we really are going to rely on you guys to help push those things, point out the priorities, help us prioritize things, and push that. So those are two things that I would like to see. You know, if you guys can weave them into what you're doing, you've got a good plan. But those two pieces of it, I think, would be really helpful and things that aren't going to necessarily stem from us. Right? Anybody else got anything else?
Thank you for that invitation. I'll take you up on it.
Yeah, take us up on it. It's,
I can tell you the aesthetics committee walked the downtown, I think Karen might have been part of that, to identify locations that might be suitable for exploring further public art. We'll be meeting Thursday morning, and I can promise you we will convey these and discuss those further on Thursday.
Fantastic.
Said one more question on the staffing need that you're looking for. Are there specifics around what you might think you would need additional staffing for? I'm sure there's 1,000 things, but
That's what we're narrowing in on, exactly which direction we'd go with that.
Yeah. Okay.
You guys feel like your current finance model supports that? I mean, obviously you must, but that was part of the back and forth discussion you guys were working through?
Yes, working on that for the 2022 budget.
Yeah, okay. All right, when are we going to talk again? We need to do this more often. No, really, it's, EDC's going to hear me say this probably again. If you're a resident of the village of Downers Grove, what is your village? Ask people what their village is. If you discount police department, fire department, it's schools, right? Or it's parks. It's not us. Again, not us. What is it to us? It's our downtown. It's the economic activity and vitality that's in our community, and it's moving snow out of the way. And so you guys, both the groups that are here tonight, are an enormous part of how our residents feel about their community. Just a huge part. So I hope that we can have these conversations more than once every 3 years when we put a plan together, right?
Perfect.
Rich?
One other comment. I'd be interested to see what the current thinking is on bringing back the Friday Night Classic Car Show in some form. I know that some of the retailers like it a lot. Some of them don't like it because it doesn't bring them direct business. My personal feeling is it brings a festive atmosphere and literally hundreds, perhaps thousands of people to downtown who may not normally see that. And even though they may not end up in a place like Gia Mia on a Friday night, they may say, wow, I didn't know they had Gia Mia there. Or I wonder what Pierce Tavern's all about. I've read reviews, seems like a great place. We've got to come back here sometime. So I don't see it as much as a direct ringing up the cash register on Friday night, even though there is some ancillary benefit to that. But I think there's some intangible benefit in that feeling of community and that feeling of sense of exciting things. We had a Bonfield Express, which was a beloved event, go away because it was a private foundation, and that foundation had done it for many, many years, and it was time to retire from that. But that kind of leaves a hole in the fabric of Downers Grove, and I hope we would really consider doing that in some regard under our current circumstances to bring some of that excitement back on Friday nights.
We hear, Aaron hears, it relates to us, the feedback from the business owners, and it's similar to the feedback you all listened to earlier. It's very strong on both sides. To that end, now that we're able to meet like this, we haven't, of course, been able to, but there is a business owner meeting scheduled, is it the 16th?
It's not correct. It's a proposed business owner meeting at this point.
Okay, well, we will be meeting with the business owners to not the board, but with the business owners to specifically, among other topics, public art and some other things, to get direct feedback, not I heard she likes it and he doesn't like it. Then my second point on that is the Moose Lodge held a car show Saturday or two ago. I went, they're still learning how it runs, but I'm well acquainted with the board member at the Moose who organized it, and I'll be encouraging him and offering help in Aaron's background if we can to help them do something a little more casual but still have the feel that you alluded to before the year ends out. And that's a workaround with the parking spaces and the the other issues that we have right now.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here for 2.5 hours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael and Bob, can you guys drag your feet just a second? Rich just ducked out for 2 minutes.
So-
Just drag your feet.
So I could take this opportunity just to frame up our discussion. So we're here as part of long-range planning, the village's annual efforts to create a plan that guides not only our day-to-day operations and our budgets, but addresses, identifies issues that may affect our long-term future. In our long-range plan, we identify issues, we put together strategies and solutions to address those issues, and we come up with an annual or 18-month work plan. When we talk about our work plan or priority action items, oftentimes actions that relate to downtown management or the Economic Development Corporation are discussed by our council. So this year's innovation is to take advantage of the timing of the two entities that are also preparing their strategic plans to increase our alignment and make sure that the work plans among the three organizations are aligned, make sure that we cover all the action items that our council would like to cover, and make sure that no action items are missing. So that was the context in which we heard from downtown management about their priorities, goals, and action items. And our other partner organization is Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation, here to present their strategic plan. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, welcome, everyone. Thank you for having us. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Bob Fernandez. I'm a 14-year resident of Downers Grove. During the day, I'm a partner at the law firm of Latham & Watkins, and I've got the pleasure of serving as the board chairman of the Downers Grove EDC. I'm really excited about what we're going to present and talk to you about. This, as you can see, it's not a one-year plan, but it's a 22 to 26 strategic plan that we have. Before I turn things over to Michael, there's a couple things I want to take a moment. I cannot thank all the people who were involved in putting this together. As Michael will talk about, this was a culmination of a series of meetings. We did it by sector. At the end of the day, we had over 60 stakeholders that were involved in our focus groups, our meetings, our calls. To me, that spoke and was really reaffirming, because it reaffirmed that the people in Downers Grove are committed. They're very civically engaged. Michael, I'm blown away when Michael picks up the phone and he asks somebody to join one of our focus groups. They jumped at it. These are business people and civic leaders that were really invigorated by the opportunity to have an opportunity to get involved and tell us about their segments and their sector and how it impacts. It has been impacted not only because of COVID, but also kind of looking at more fulsomely down the road. So I want to thank the stakeholders that were involved. Truly, it speaks volumes of Downers Grove. Secondly, the executive committee of the EDC, you had people who took time out of their day, in addition to their typical EDC chores, to lead focus groups, to get people that they know professionally to get involved in our discussions. And again, the EDC executive committee is great. The staff, Michael doesn't like to toot his own horn, they worked their tails off. The research that went into it, the organization of the meetings and the calls, Millie, Lisa, and Michael can't get enough. And I really want to thank the village, in addition to Bob and Greg and Mike and Dave, who are really, not only are they partners and members of our board, but in putting this together and focusing people's attention and getting real participation and engagement. Can't say enough. And the support that the village council and the village gives to the EDC, we really view this as a strategic relationship. At the end of the day, our goal, as Michael will say, is to create a really vibrant business community that we're proud of, that not only is something that makes the town we live in more vibrant, but at the end of the day, let's be honest, if we could drive more business and we can create more revenue for the village, there's a lot of things that we can do. So, you'll see one of the things that we're doing to really focus on our goals is to create results that retain business, attract new business. And at the end of the day, if we could track it and measure it with either increases in EAV or increases in F&B tax, sales tax, hotel tax, this is something that will really benefit the village, not only in terms of what they want to do now, but what we want to do going forward in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael.
Thank you, Bob. And I want to thank Bob. Bob is one of the
most prominent commercial real estate attorneys in the Chicago area, and frankly in the country. He gives so much of his time to this organization, so I want to thank you today, Bob, once again. This was a 70-page document. It was very difficult for me to try to summarize this in 10 minutes, but I'm going to try. It's always hard for me to promise.
Now.
I always promise to be brief, which is a lot for me to promise. So bear with me. The EDC's 5-year plan includes the mission statement and core objectives. We looked at 10 sections that we analyzed, including 5 economic sectors. Like your long-range plan, each section identifies key issues, provides background, strategies, and solutions, lists key performance indicators, and also action items. The action items are prioritized as high priority, to be completed in year 1 of a 5-year plan. Medium priority is to be completed in years 3 or 5. Those high priority action items are presented under our 1-year work plan in the executive summary. So I'm going to provide a summary of each of these areas, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions when I'm done. The mission of the EDC is to enhance the economic vitality of the village of Downers Grove through the retention, expansion, and attraction of business that is conducive to improving the quality of life in Downers Grove. We have 6 core objectives: promote and facilitate business attraction, promote and facilitate retention and expansion, promote and facilitate development tools and programs, including those identified in the village's comprehensive plan and the long-range plan. Promote and facilitate travel, dining, and entertainment, spending in Downers Grove with an emphasis on overnight stays. Facilitate the dissemination of information on workforce development programs to existing and prospective businesses, and to cultivate a diverse local economy. First section is on the commercial sector, which is extremely important. It was the longest one in the plan. We looked at the changing retail environment in the era of internet. We looked at several retail corridors, including Ogden, Fairview and Maple, and Belmont, and 3 functionally obsolete shopping centers, the Grove, University Plaza, and Meadowbrook. Our 1-year work plan, these are some of the items that are in that. Identify comparative advantages in the commercial real estate market between Downers Grove and the communities we compete with in our trade area. Make recommendations to the Village of Downers Grove on tools and incentives for commercial redevelopment projects and the attraction of commercial tenants. Identify opportunities for expanded sites for potential auto dealerships projects on Ogden Avenue. The EDC Executive Committee should make a recommendation to the village on the potential creation of a new TIF district that covers Ogden Avenue from Stonewall to Walnut. I'm sure you're aware the TIF district ends at Stonewall and has always ended at Stonewall. And that is the reason maybe the rest of Ogden hasn't developed as much. Closing out the existing TIF district, this would be another recommendation, closing out the existing TIF district, Ogden TIF, by using funds for land acquisition, demolition, and other development costs that could help bring us some additional car dealerships. And the Executive Committee should consider all options for the long-term future of the Grove Shopping Center and make recommendations to the village. Downtown redevelopment. We have the responsibility for facilitating redevelopment in the downtown. The plan identifies 2 key issues for downtown redevelopment. 1, addressing obstacles to redevelopment and the impact of unit diversity and high-density multifamily projects on the future of the downtown economy. Opportunities for collaboration with downtown management is also discussed in the plan. Our business plan indicates that the EDC and downtown management should consider partnering opportunities, in addition to what we already do. One opportunity would be for the EDC and downtown management to explore shared office space. There are 3 items in our year 1 work plan is to be completed at the end of 2022. First is to make recommendations to the village and on potential tools and incentives for the attraction of redevelopment projects in the downtown. Secondly, the EDC Executive Committee will discuss the issue of unit diversity and density for future downtown multifamily projects as it relates to the downtown economy and provide that feedback to the village. And the third one is the EDC will report within 3 months on potential partnering opportunities with the Downtown Management Corporation, so by the end of October. The next sector is light industrial. There is more than 5.6 million square feet of industrial space in Downers Grove. I think that would surprise a lot of people. Opportunities for industrial redevelopment are addressed in the plan, as are the obstacles for redevelopment in our largest industrial park, the Ellsworth Business Park. 3 items in the year 1 plan, work plan. 1, conduct a comprehensive inventory of businesses and buildings in the Ellsworth Business Park. 2, identify future industrial uses for the Ellsworth Business Park and Oak Grove Commons, that's the park north of Butterfield, including sales tax generating businesses. And 3, we're going to create an industrial development committee that will review issues and opportunities and obstacles in the Ellsworth Business Park, Oak Grove Commons, and our other industrial districts. Next is the office sector. The plan also discusses the implications of the pandemic on the office market and the opportunity to attract foreign direct investment office tenants to Downers Grove. Downers Grove is one of the premier locations for Class A office projects, including corporate and division headquarters in the entire Chicago area. In fact, it's what we're known for. If you ask business people in the Chicago area, they're going to talk about our office market. In addition, several foreign-owned firms, such as SAP, based in Germany, and Glanbia, based in Ireland, have set up North American headquarters in Downers Grove. We have 1 item for our year 1 work plan. Make recommendations to the Village of Downers Grove on tools and incentives for the attraction of Class A office tenants. We did this a few years ago with the reduction of building permit fees. So I think we're going to take a look at that again, make a recommendation to you. Business retention and expansion. The EDC pivoted to business retention and expansion as a high priority during the pandemic, which of course we're still in. The plan discusses what steps the EDC can take to influence the retention and expansion of existing businesses in Downers Grove. And then 1 important item in this area for year 1, we're going to purchase and utilize new customer relationship management software. It's going to help us in a lot of areas, but none more important than tracking every single business in town, not only to know what's happening with them, recording notes on what's going on with their business, but also as a communication vehicle to reach out to them when there's grant opportunities and other things like that. Economic drivers. This is the newest section of the plan as compared to a few years ago. The EDC has identified several economic drivers that are mentioned in the plan. There are 2. These are, number 1, the shortage of labor for existing and prospective Downers Grove employers, and the promotion of entrepreneurship and innovation. Throughout the country, companies considering siting new facilities have identified the availability of labor as their top issue. There's a national survey done every year by Area Development Magazine. They survey like 10,000 decision makers who made facility decisions. The availability of labor is number 1 on that list, so it's got to be an important item for us. So because this is a new area, we don't have any year 1 completion action items. We've got that for year 3, but you're going to hear us talking more about these in the future. The Downers Grove Visitors Bureau. The promotion of Downers Grove as a destination for visitors, I'll call them non-residents, through the Downers Grove Visitors Bureau will remain a top priority. The Bureau promotes Downers Grove as a destination for guests at our hotels and customers for our restaurants and stores. The plan discusses the impact that visitors have on our local economy and the potential economic impact, especially for sports tourism, which is the major focus now of the DuPage Convention and Visitors Bureau, of which we're a member. The plan also includes a chart providing data on the economic impact of a visitor. And so in our item for year 1 in our work plan to be completed by the end of year 1 is to become an active participant in the DuPage Sports Commission. Sports tourism now makes up 30% of all tourism in the United States, and it's by far the fastest growing sector in tourism. Marketing and project management. Marketing and project management are addressed as well. The strategic plan discusses measurable marketing programs that should be implemented to promote Downers Grove, principally on the digital side where it's easy to track results, and how the EDC can enhance the assistance and facilitation it provides to our clients. And the action items that we've targeted for this area, again, are slated for the completion by the end of year 3. Partnership for Prosperity and Investor Relations. The plan discusses Partnership for Prosperity, which is basically our membership program. The plan looks at how the EDC can influence the decision by area companies to join or renew their annual investment, providing Data-driven reports to the Village of Downers Grove, are by far our top investor, and all of our investors is going to be very important going forward. It's a way to show people who are investing money in our organization what the results are. And a lot of that will be provided through just analysis and presentation of data. So there's 2 items under the year 1 work plan, again to be completed by the end of 22. The first one is to make a presentation on the status of Partnership Prosperity to our executive committee by this January. And the second one is probably the most important work plan item in the strategic plan. It's to work with the village to draft a report to set measurable goals and key performance indicators for each of our economic sectors, and we want to complete this report within 6 months, basically in January of 22. It's a great way to analyze our local economy by sector. Finally, we completed our business plan it was approved by our executive committee at the end of February, and that is included as the last section of the strategic plan. So the business plan is in there. The purpose of the business plan is to ensure a successful alignment and partnership between the EDC and the Village of Downers Grove. The business plan discusses the governance and management of the organization. An analysis of the financial position of the EDC is also provided. The village hotel tax, which is currently the EDC's primary funding source, was addressed. The hotel tax is no longer a sustainable and predictable source for EDC revenue, and the business plan recommends that the village be able to provide funding to us from any source they deem fit. In addition, the plan discusses the creation of a 501c3 subsidiary so we can apply for grants. One of the things we found during the first year of the pandemic was we were not eligible for a lot of grants that were out there. Information on the EDC operating account and reserve accounts is also provided in the business plan. And finally, there's an overview in there on the budget process. There are 6 items in year 1 to be completed. The first is the operating agreement between the village and the EDC shall be amended to remove the local hotel tax as the source of EDC funding and replaced with an annual funding request, which is the typical way most EDCs operate. EDC shall explore the creation of a 501c3 subsidiary. Our executive committee shall revise the reserve account policies regarding the amount to be held in reserve accounts. EDC shall begin consideration of office space options in advance of our September 2023 expiration of our current lease. And I talked about downtown management a minute ago. The EDC shall create a line item for special projects beginning with the 22 budget, so that if an opportunity comes along, a study needs to be done, or whatever the opportunity is, there's been some funds set aside for that. And last, all EDC expenses shall be aligned with the priorities and recommended actions in the strategic plan. So there'll be that alignment there. I want to thank everyone, as Bob indicated, that helped in the development of this plan. It was truly a team effort. We'll be presenting the plan to other public and private sector boards and at our annual lunch on October 1st. I hope you've marked your calendar and will be at that luncheon. And now I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. I've been talking too long.
Thank you, Michael. And Bob, thank you both for taking the time to be here tonight and lay this on us. There's a lot here, and there's a lot of, I think, really good steps, as Dave indicated at the beginning of this section here, of efforts to try and align our organizations. Not that we weren't aligned before, but we were a little bit off cycle on some things. And so by putting our budgeting processes and our long-range planning processes into sort of an alignment, it allows us, I think, a better opportunity to work better together and to make sure that the actions we take are supportive of each other. That's a really important thing. And I want to thank you guys for working on this. I know that the process, the business plan, and getting this thing accomplished in the time period needed to make it fit into our LRP process was not easy. But it is really important. It's a critical part of what we do. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you guys have heard all of us talk for several years about the value of economic development in Downers Grove. And when you look at your property tax bill, for anybody that's still watching tonight, this effort is enormous. This effort pays for our community, largely. I know people get aggravated when they look at their property tax bill, but we don't pay for what the village provides, largely. So this is an enormous part of the vitality and survival of our community. So you guys being in on this effort to try and align things is super important. I'm looking forward to those KPIs. I know that when we, in my time sitting on the EDC, as I think back, or on the council thinking back to EDC reports, a lot of times we're dealing with input from the EDC about decisions that the council is required to make. So their budget allocation things perhaps, or their deals, rebate deals, or TIF deals, TIF appropriations, variety of things. And so if we have these KPIs that we're measuring, we can start to build a little more sense of the direct impact of any particular project. And I'm really looking forward to that. Anybody, council, got any questions or comments for Michael? Rich, please.
Yeah, thanks for the report. You can tell there was a huge amount of effort, very professionally done. EDC does a great job of bringing the various pieces together. I think one thing I would like to see moving forward, that if you could fold into your thinking, is for us to do some outbound proactive things. I've been beating the drum about first floor retail and things like that, and it's because I've been kind of watching historically what happened. The first one was with Marquis on Maple, and there was a valid reason that that developer said, well, we can't put first floor retail, so we'll put some amenities in. The next one was Burlington Station, where they said, well, we try to go out to retailers and no one wants to be one block off of Main Street. The newest one happened to be on Washington and Maple, that it's too far from where the business are. No one's going to walk around the corner in order to get to a retail destination. We had discussions when DuPage Medical expanded their facility on Main Street of, couldn't we have first floor retail, second floor offices, filling that parking lot with something that's generating tax revenue. So in my mind, in the purest sense, if we did something proactive, and I'm going to pick a block, it doesn't, I don't know who owns that particular block. Like you look at the north side of Forest, there's a general misconception that our downtown goes from Maple to Burlington. Well, no, our downtown goes north of the tracks. But as an example, let's say we had that whole block of Forest and the owner or owners of that block said, I want to put that in play. If we could actually go out to a developer and say, okay, here's what we want to do. And I know, first of all, we involves private property owners that have to have a willingness to do this and cooperation from us. But where we could go out and say, okay, we want 2 levels of underground parking. We want 1 level of first floor retail. We want a level of offices, and floors 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 could be residential. Do you want to bid on that? And if they're not interested in doing that because it happens to be a block off of Main Street, we'll say, okay, fine, you don't have to bid on it. We'll find somebody who'd be willing to do that. But I think unless we do something bold like that, we're never going to break this. Well, they're a block off of Main Street, so we don't expect businesses to be located in our downtown business district other than our central core street. And I think if we don't get out of that level of thinking that everything is only on Main Street, now I'm simplifying the issue, I don't think we'll ever get the sales tax advantage in addition to the real estate tax advantage we get from that kind of development. And it could be a different segment in town. It could be a different catalyst site. I know we're stuck on a lot of the big and worrisome places. Grove is very complicated, as we've discussed, but perhaps if we had a bigger picture view that we could change the paradigm, take more of a leadership position, I think we should look for opportunities to do that. And if it's too hard to shoehorn it into a specific space, then maybe it's picking a different space, or maybe it's thinking about a different parcel of land if the owner is willing to play with us in order to do that. So I'd like us to kind of look for those kind of opportunities moving forward, and then we can put the magical pieces in play that make wonderful things happen, like Packy Web was a good example. Rexnord was a good example in the way we stepped up. But that's kind of my input around this, and that's the way I see it. Thank you.
Anyone else got any questions or comments about the plan? Chris, please.
Yeah, so first, I too want to say thanks for the hard work that went into this. A lot of great stuff, a lot of new stuff compared to 15, certainly the last time around. And in the time that we're in, this stuff is difficult to plan. I do have, and I'm especially excited to see some of the focus. I know it's maybe 3 years out, but looking at entrepreneurship, because I think the pandemic has allowed a lot of entrepreneurs to be in lots of different places. The city isn't necessarily the hub that it once was, and I think although it's still an important piece, and I think Downers Grove is particularly well positioned for those who maybe want to start a business here, but also want to have the connection and being close to the city. So I'm excited to see the work on that. I also think the key performance indicators are critical, and I think, I can envision much of a dashboard that we're looking at on a regular basis where we see how we're stacking up against the objectives and where we stand. So all that great stuff. The one question I had was around the marketing. So I'm just curious because certainly my background is not in that type of community business development. But I just wonder, you put a budget number in there for marketing, and in my view, it looked relatively modest. I'm just curious if that's something where, if you poured gasoline on marketing, does it move the needle? Or is this more of a relationship-based thing, and the marketing dollars are more for more down funnel type approaches? You talked about digital, which I tend to like, but also think it's effective. But I'm just curious if maybe you have thoughts on, you're asked, it looked like it was 70,000, 80,000. If it was 500,000, does that move the needle on what we could attract to Downers Grove? And then we could obviously extrapolate out what that might mean in terms of business and revenue and all that kind of thing.
It's an excellent question. I don't believe in throwing a lot of money at marketing unless you're going to get a return on your investment. Most of the marketing we do is relationship building, principally through me. And the things we do, the website, we're going to be doing LinkedIn. There are some trade shows we have to do. There's some advertising that all our competitors are in. We basically have two types of marketing. One is, what can we do to support the relationship building, so you're building a relationship for the future. And secondly, keeping an eye on what our competitors are doing and making sure that we're not missing something. So it is a very modest amount of money, and we try to leverage as much of it as we can to keep that number down. But also, I don't know that we need to spend more than that. I don't. I think that my chief objective when I talk to a developer or a site consultant or a broker, I want to come for a visit. Because I think the town almost sells itself. I want to come here and see Downers Grove and feel it. And that tour that we had, I've almost got it memorized. I can go from Oak Grove Commons down to Downers Park Plaza on 75th, and it's to tell our story. But sometimes there's some money you have to spend on occasion, and we just try to leverage it as much as we can. So we're not just buying it. There's an economic development organization, I won't say who it is. They spend $250,000 a year on advertising. They don't get any leads out of it. I know they don't. And to me, that's just wasted money. Because number one, if you do metrics on it, you're like, geez, the return on investment here is terrible. So we're going to try to make sure that anything we spend money on dollar-wise on marketing, we can measure it.
Yeah.
If we can't measure it, we're not going to do it.
Yeah, I have no question that you'll be, smart with that money. The question was more about, is there an opportunity to, if we were to say there was more to like, would that have an impact? Is $1 in, another $1 out or $2 out, just based on where the opportunities?
If I can jump in, one of the things, as Michael mentioned, is we are kind of positioning ourselves to be able to make special requests that are strategic. So let's throw out an example. Let's say that we come up with a proposal or some options for the village to consider for Woodgrove or to attract more to Ellsworth. If we can come up, and one of the things we're thinking about doing is to conduct some studies to kind of get a sense as to whether it's a comparative study or what are the shortcomings or what are the things that we would need to elevate Ellsworth to the next level. If we can go ahead and an example I would give is we would request, at X dollars that we would do for a study. We come back after the study and we say, okay, this is what we think, based on the study, this is what we think, and one of the options would be to do X, Y, and Z. Once we come up with a plan that the council endorses, then maybe another special request would be, okay, now we've got a plan that the council's behind. It could be Woodgrove, it could be Ellsworth, whatever it is, and then the question is, do we use another special request where it's the EDC? Then we have the plan that the village council has endorsed, and now do we go ahead and push it out to market to let more brokers or developers, or in the case of retailers, know that this is something that we're doing. But I think that would have to be something that would be kind of coordinated with a special project that now we want to go ahead and push out and make more widely known.
I'll give you an example. I guess it was 5 years ago, we decided to spend about $4,000 a year to do this reception for the brokerage community at Alter Brewing. It was a huge success. 4 years in a row, we had capacity turnout. Didn't really cost us that much, but it let the mayor and Dave and everyone on our team, Greg and everyone, Bob, have a chance to meet and become ambassadors to meet these folks. We did it 4 years in a row. We didn't do it in 20 because of the pandemic. We didn't do it this year because of the pandemic. We're going to do it again in 22. It's in our budget, or will be in our budget. But it's a way for us to leverage, the dollars we do have to come up with something that's going to help build relationships. But one of the things that's in the plan that we'd like to do by the end of year 3 is a branding strategy for both visitors and for business attraction, and that's going to cost some money. But we need to look at it fully, and then we will come back and that perhaps that'll go into the budget saying we need $30,000 for a branding strategy or whatever it is. So it's a great question.
Thank you. Rich?
And just a follow-on comment on that, we typically look at headcount as being cost. We had someone in the public service that asked to the cost. In EDC, though, and in downtown management, we have an opportunity to create revenue generators, which is more of a headcount that could create an investment situation where if we invest it up front, this is a kind of direct return we will get to that. So I'd ask you not to be shy if there are areas where we could partnership. There are certain freedoms that EDC, things that you can do that the government entity can't. So I think we should look for those things, and then it would be a direct return. If one of that investment brought in a major new development and it's one of our big catalyst sites, that would certainly more than pay for itself and be worthwhile.
Well, in true Downers Grove tradition, we try to run a very lean machine, just like the village does. We had 4 full-time employees in 2015 and 16, and that person left. We did not replace her, and it lowered our personnel costs. And we do tap into other organizations, especially the village, for help. Example, we don't pay a dime for IT services. Dave made his IT department available to us, and they're great. And we may call on them once every 4 or 5 months for something. That just saved a line item in our budget.
Sure.
So that collaboration, that creativity, we just try really hard to what can we do so that we're not spending as much money and yet still achieving results,
Right.
which is the Downers Grove way.
I hear you, which is if you have a plan and you have a good idea, be bold and ask.
Right.
We will. Thank you for saying that, Bob.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you, guys, for coming.
Thank you.
Please make sure, Bob, you kind of laid out you couldn't name them all, but say thanks to them all anyway.
All the people I can't name?
Yeah, all the people you can't
I'll tell you what, in the plan, you'll see them all
Yes,
listed.
they are all listed.
Yeah, there were 65 of them, and the amazing part, I think this speaks volumes for our community and maybe for the organization. These people were sending me thank you notes. Thanks for inviting me. This was a great discussion. And a lot of these folks I didn't even know lived in Downers Grove, which was also nice to see. So thank you.
And as you can imagine, some of the conversations were more colorful depending on who was on.
So I did have one more question that I had made a note and forgot to ask. You mentioned the 501c3, right? Do you anticipate that requiring hiring a grant writer if we were to do that?
That is a topic that we've had discussions.
Yeah.
I think most, I don't know if you've ever applied for a grant, most organizations that do either have their own
Yeah.
or you pay a consultant. I
Right.
mean, it depends on how often you're going to be
Sure.
doing this. But yeah, that's something that
Yeah.
neither Michael nor I nor Millie nor Lisa have that in our
Okay.
background.
Yeah.
If you have any leads or ideas on that.
No, I don't, but I know that they're necessary, but you can certainly outsource. I didn't know
Well, here's
I didn't
something
know
that's-
to what degree the 501(c) would, how much,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like, it opens up a lot of opportunity for us to apply for grants, then it's worth putting
Yeah.
a full-time person on. I just didn't know if there was.
Actually, there aren't going to be that many opportunities because unfortunately, like I get all these grant
Yeah.
newsletters, and the village gets them too.
Yeah.
Kathy, I think her name is.
We have a full-time
Yeah.
grant administrator that have been helping us.
There are so few economic development grants to apply for. There are some, but you have to be a 501c3. Here's the interesting part of this. The IRS code specifically says Convention and Visitors Bureaus, Chambers of Commerce, and EDCs have to be C6s. Yet all over the United States, a lot of EDCs filed as a C3 originally and somehow slipped through the cracks. We didn't do that. Back in '06, when Dave and the others were putting us together, they followed the law, and we were a C3.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
we can form a C3 subsidiary, which what that will do is it lets us apply for some grants, and then that money can only be used for certain things like
Yeah.
communications, education. But it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
So we're going to pursue it.
Smart.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. I like it.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, village council colleagues, how about a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all, and good night.